I'm DJ.
And I'm Andrew,
Welcome to One Shot Tavern.
a TTRPG podcast where we seek out new ways to tell your stories through different systems and games. And today we are talking to Ryan Lynch, creator and artist on Perils and Princesses, and more recently the awesome Kickstarter Sweet Revenge, an adventure module for that system. Ryan, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
What spurred you to create this game? Because as a masculine presenting individual, it's not like the most obvious thing, but I know you're like a big fan of fairy tales and whatnot, and you do amazing fairy tale artwork. What spurred you to create Perils and Princesses? And then give me the pitch for the game.
Yeah. So I definitely I'm a huge fairy tale fan. A big reason why I'm into art and into fantasy is Disney movies. It is the kind of emotional connection and the amazing immersive artwork of Snow White, of Sleeping Beauty, of Sword in the Stone, and all those. Princess stories are some of my favorite storybooks too, right? There's this kind of wave of more like mid-century storybooks, kind of like Redwall, but also like one of my favorites is called The Farthest Away Mountain. Things like The Little White Horse is a little bit older. These are just like the kind of adventure stories that aren't really like, they're not sword and sorcery adventures. It's like a different genre of fantasy adventure. And it's just like storybook adventure or princess adventures or that kind of thing. So I grew up reading those books and then drawing those drawings and watching those movies. And then a couple of years ago, right now I have a 4-year-old and I have a 12-year-old, but they were a little bit younger a couple of years ago. And I would just, at the same time, I was laid off from my job. I had a 3-year-old at home who we watched Moana a ton. We watched Sleeping Beauty a ton. We watched, now we watch Frozen and all those. So I was sitting with her all the time drawing. And then with my older kid, we played Dungeons and Dragons. So I had like all these three things happening. And it just started with me thinking about what if Moana was on this campaign, right? What would my daughter Alice's character be like? She wouldn't be a rogue or she would be,
It doesn't
it'd be
fit.
something else, right?
Yeah.
And I started just doing these drawings and listing these fairy tale things, and I was going to make a fairy tale D&D campaign, but then in terms of mechanically, what I wanted the game to do is be very simple, very easy, and to really reflect that kind of adventure and those heroes with heart and those kind of abilities where these heroes are overcoming the perils in maybe a different way, a different kind of adventure, but still be dangerous and still be exciting and still be all these things, but just be framed in a way that just felt like a storybook.
That's so fun. And I mean, for listeners, if you haven't checked out Perils and Princesses yet, just look it up really quick. You'll get a really good sense for the visual style and the tone of
Yeah.
this game. The art does
Very
so
whimsical.
much to communicate that. And I'm excited to feel that when we play. When it comes to like when it came to like actually developing the game, you said you jumped into this going, I'm not sure what I need, but I'm not getting the mechanical support from the system that I'm familiar with. What was your familiarity with like the grander playscape of options in TTRPGs before jumping into Perils and Princesses?
What's funny is a huge inspiration was Merkborg. I
Oh,
had like,
wow. That's awesome.
looking at it, I
Basically
can
the
see it
same.
now. No,
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
I'm seeing it.
So what, and this is what I like something like Merkborg or something like the Black Hack was a big one mechanically. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this feels like D&D, but it has you don't have to do any algorithms to get where you want. You can roll the dice and see it. And that felt very important for a system that's made for families, made for new players, made for this kind of venture. I want to roll like one of my big design principles was no algorithms, no proficiency bonus, and then the plus this to hit.
Yeah.
You use different size dice. Everything's very clear immediately. And then yeah, with the Merkborg thing, it has to do with the simplicity of like resolution and also like, well, the layout, obviously, it just was like, as a graphic designer and illustrator, it's like, oh, I can do anything. This can be anything.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like mechanics, this idea that there's this phrase I use, another like design principle is gritty and pretty I use. And it's
Yeah.
this idea that little things matter. And that is something in common with say Perils and Princesses and like Merc Mortgage, like you have or like Karen, right? That
Yeah.
was another like you have only a couple things in in one of those gritty dungeon games. Maybe it's like this totally horrible cursed relic or whatever. But in the stories that Perils and
Grandma's
Princess is
cookies.
about, yeah, Grandma's cookie. It's the box of salt in The Hobbit, right? Or it's uh like there's this in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf has while they're like going up the mountain, they're going up Kahadros, and he's got like a little vial of some kind of just delightful liquor, and it just warms them all up enough to like
Mhm.
survive the night. So that's something I feel like epic fantasy as a genre is missing because like you have these giant lists of like stuff you have, but you're busy tracking like how many prayers to this ancient god you can make to like smite someone, or you're
Yeah.
tracking these epic things, and so then the little things get lost, which is fine.
Right.
But it's
If you have an overflowing bag of holding that's just spewing
what
magic
what do I
items that you
even
don't
what do I
use.
even have like,
Yeah.
and that can be fun. That's a different thing, but like it didn't doesn't make sense
Yeah.
for like a more humble kind of magic is
Yeah.
what I always say too.
Yeah. It's funny because like I run a lot of games as a game master for hire. It's my profession. But there's just sometimes when I'm running Cypher System, Dungeons and Dragons, and people like there's so much stuff for me to keep track of, and I'm the person running it, like the things that they can do. And you'll have situations where, like, oh, there's a new spell out, and I just took it for my character, and it basically gives me portent dice all the time. And I'm like, I don't have to ask me about new spells because I need to understand them. First of all, that sounds incredibly broken. So to have it be like, hey, these small things are super important. I'm just looking at my character sheet and I'm just like, oh, this is great. This is so easy for me to read and
Yeah.
understand. And I know that I can have fun with this, which is obviously the goal.
Let's start at the top. So for people that haven't picked up the book, haven't checked out your game yet, what's it like to build a character and jump into a game of Perils and Princesses?
Yeah. So the main thing that drives what your character is and why all the characters are considered princesses is you have a fairy godmother. That is like that's the game. You have a fairy godmother and she has given you a gift. And the gift is like a class, right? These are like it's going to define you know, your abilities throughout what you do. If it's an enchanting voice, you get like, very princessy voice like abilities, charming and lullabies and those kind of things. Or if you have a wild heart, like you can give a little whistle and summon animal companions, but you can also, when you get to the fourth level, which is like the big capstone level, you can turn into an animal, which in a game like this is huge.
Yeah.
That's really big magic to be able to turn into an animal. You choose your gift. I think there's 8. It's been a
Is
while.
it like so in our case for the game we're playing, you provided pre-gens. Um, is it kind of PBTA like playbook style normally where it's like you get this stuff and there's maybe 1 or 2 options, or what is it usually like when you create a character?
Yeah. So because you pick your gift and then you roll your stats, there's 3 stats. They are resolve, grace, and wits. And it's a roll under system. So again, no algorithms, no modifiers, right? So you have to get your stat or under. Uh, and the stats are very thematic. Like resolve is like a combination of strength and con, but it's all about using your inner strength to do outer strength things. Grace is social grace as well as like physical grace, and wits is magic and your quick reaction time. And all this. So you roll your stats, and then a lot of the flavor comes when you roll your stuff. I think I love making characters, and I love rolling to see what stuff I have. You roll for for the weapon. You roll for a number of things that are like in your purse or your backpack, and there's a lot of they're very like sort of mindful trinkets. They're like little things that in the if you they're like invitations to be clever, and so you get a number of like trinket like things, and that's pretty much it. There's some tables for like personality and backstory or who exactly your fairy godmother is, and that's kind of all up to the player to like fill in what kind of um what kind of princess they want to be, right?
Right. That's fun. I mean, I love even in the games that I'm working on myself, my goal is to get somebody a sense of the genre, the tone, the setting, the game, right? but not necessarily throw them into the deep end of like mechanics, right? It's all about getting somebody up and running as soon as possible. And I think that like to DJ's point, it's like looking through the character sheets so far, it's essentially that. As far as other mechanical opportunities in designing this game, what did you build the rest of the game around in terms of facilitating a very different style play, right? If it's not a power fantasy of D&D of casting ninth level spells where you move a mountain, it's obviously about grandma's cookies level of awesome and magic and quaintness. What other mechanical opportunities for facilitating this level of play did you see when you were working on it?
Yeah, there's a couple mechanical things in terms of that I think set it apart for maybe some games. And one of them is the idea of heart dice, which takes the place of hit dice in like a trad game. Um, the idea is you use them during a short rest, which is called a picnic. You can use them during a picnic to heal your hard points, right? And then you can also spend them retroactively help a friend's failed roll. You depending on your level, you get a D4. Uh, if a friend fails a roll by less than 4, you can explain how at the last second you help them and spend that dice. And then if they missed it by 2 and you roll a 2 or more, you're great. And you just
Yeah.
kind of, it's a very teamwork. It's like the help action or the helpfulness or the inspiration, like the bardic, it's just everyone has it all the time. That's just something you can do. And that's part of your character.
I
And
love
that's a
that.
big, and also like from a granular game design level, a lot of games like this, like Karen, right? Like all the combat hits on automatically. You're taking damage no matter what. This
Mhm.
has roll to hit because it just doesn't fit the vibe to be that fragile. Like it's more about the struggle to hit and or dodge. It's about those moments. It's not about the damage. So that makes everybody having hard die all the time. It kind of counteracts the fact that roll to hit can be slow at the same time inviting like role play moments. Um, so it does a lot. I like that mechanic a lot. And it's one that like on the surface seems like pretty simple, but once you get a table with everybody rolling with it, it
Yeah.
can be like, it can turn a simple action sequence into something that's like much more collaborative and interesting and just builds upon the story.
So you launched Perils and Princesses originally on Kickstarter, correct? A couple years ago now.
Yep,
So, and then that went fairly successful.
it did
And
more than I thought it would.
right. And then getting into the game design world and that being more of a part of your life other than just like, oh, I play games. Now you're like,
Yeah.
I'm a designer and I
Yeah.
make
Right.
games. That's a big shift. But like when it comes to the games you run on a regular basis, are you trying stuff that like different systems, new systems with your kids, or are you like running Perils and Princesses a
I'm
lot, lots of D&D?
I'm
What are you doing?
mostly playing Perils and Princesses.
Yeah,
Um,
that's awesome.
but no, my main game group, if someone's out, we try usually a weird thing. Like
Yeah.
Sean Four, who was the editor for Perils and Princesses, he's GMing our like long-term PNP game. And so whenever someone can't make it and people still want to play, he's usually got something wild. Yeah.
So on that note, like when you release the game, does it come with any base campaigns or anything like that, or is it just like
There's in the
normal
game book,
scenarios?
there's like an adventure setting, a little dungeon I put in there. And then after that, there's a few pages of like campaign seeds. So there's like a little
Okay,
hex.
that's what I thought.
Yeah, there's a mini hex map, a couple factions, very much like a Mouse Ritter inspired kind of
Yeah.
way of building a little world. Um, and then, and I know some people online have taken that and built their whole campaign. Um, but yeah, so they got one location just to like walk you through
Right.
some like dungeon like encounters, and then just like a campaign seeds. And then the new campaign is like the full.
Right.
You're here. You can run Perils and Princesses with this book right off the bat.
So on that wonderful segue, tell us about Sweet Revenge. This is what we're mainly going to be getting into today, and I'm really
Yeah,
excited
yeah.
to hear
So
about.
today we'll be playing Sweet Escape, which is like a prequel one shot to Sweet Revenge.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, so Sweet Revenge is written by Destiny Howell. I wanted to make sure I brought in some new folks just to help with the workload and get some new perspectives on what Pearls and Princesses can be, right? And Destiny, shortly after Pearls and Princesses was done, she emailed me and was like, "Hey, I saw that the license said that you can make unofficial stuff. What about official stuff? How does that work?" And I was like, "I don't know, pitch something to me, right?" Because I would love to keep doing this. And she showed me her at home campaign. She showed me some stuff she wrote for One Shot Wonders by Roll and Play Press. And I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. And then she wrote Sweet Revenge, which is all about this witch's candy curse in a cursed forest. There's like a fairy. She just checked all of these awesome fairy tale tropes off the list, and it's just a super fun. Her her NPCs are awesome. The fact that the whole world has this candy curse, so everyone's kind of turning into candy. It's like baby body horror, right? Like it's kind of it has that like it has that grim fairy tale-ness to it where it's
the grim fairy tales especially, right? Those are always every once in a while when you're running like D&D or something, you can get some of that weirdness in the Feywild, but there's something about the grim fairy tales. Don't get me wrong, they get dark, but like they still stay playful. And I think that at least at tables I've been at, it's like when we try and do some of that tone, especially in something like D&D, it still ends up just dark. And it's not always as fun and reminiscent of those grim fairy tales that were creepy, but they were still like used in such a cool way to
yeah.
to manipulate your children and to not disobey, or whatever they were originally for. But yeah, let's jump into this and then we'll come back and we'll chat some more after the game. But I'm very excited to get into this. You can check out our full actual play with Ryan and our guest players, Classic Sam and Sadie Oakleaf, right now over on YouTube and in audio form on our podcast feed. Also, please check out everything that we're up to at oneshotstavern.com. You can pick up merch. You can check out our Patreon. If you're looking for updates on my game Battle School, you can check out my brand new website, andrewbowman.com. And lastly, please check out Sweet Revenge. It's a fabulous adventure coming out for Perils and Princesses. You can head over to BackerKit right now where Ryan is still accepting late pledges. Now back to the interview. Well, we just got done playing a wonderful adventure of Perils and Princesses, a prelude to the Sweet Revenge adventure. That was incredible and truly a very unique experience I have yet to have at the tables. I always love it when that happens.
That's great.
Yes. Man, like tonally, it was
perfect.
It was great.
I love it. I really like the rolling in this.
Yes.
Because we've played a lot of roll under games, but they're always D100s. Right. And so like from Call of Cthulhu to we did Crucibles of Aether, which I really enjoyed, and a few other things. And like, D100, like it's huge. You got 100 different things that could come out of it. It seems over the top for no reason. Whereas rolling under on a D20 feels better because you're not like your brain isn't using up so many of those resources as you're counting the three numbers and you're just like, oh no, it's like cool. I rolled under. Percentage wise, it's probably a little bit easier, but not much really, right?
Well, and it's like
a lot of
it's not really a matter of math, but there's something about like I'm used to rolling a D20 because I've tried games like D&D and stuff, but I have terrible luck. And so it feels good to finally roll a 1 and it be a good thing. Like it's just something like like you said, a lot of the roll unders are percentile based, and that's fine, but rolling percentiles low doesn't have any history with
connotations.
Like, and so this is kind of fun to switch it up in that way.
There was a lot. One of my so like when I like have tenets for like or like guide rails for like game design, or at least I did. And one of them was dicey, not mathy.
Yeah.
And that kind of came out with like seeing new players, for like Dungeons and Dragons or something, and seeing a new player who's got their new set of dice and they don't get to use them all.
Yeah.
So there are D20s and D4s and D6s, and the weapons are all the different things. So this is like, it's dicey, but in a way that feels like they're all working a little bit differently. They're working together. You feel like you're reaching this toolkit. So like, I mean, I don't know. It's not streamlined, but that's not the point because it's play.
Sure.
It's like,
right.
Well, and I appreciate about the mechanics that there's a lot of fun to the dice, right? It's funny enough, if you didn't get a chance to listen to our playthrough yet, that is going to be live either soon or it already is live. But we got to play with Classic Sam and Sadie Oakleaf, and Sadie's got an incredible system that's very fun and dicey, right? Like it's all about kind of playing with the different size of dice. And in this similarly, especially the gift dice, that
Yeah, I
might be my
love the gift
singly
dice.
like favorite mechanic, where it's essentially to use the trad parallels, it's like your spell slots, it's like your stamina, it's like that, but it has the like won't I spend it. And
Yes,
I really enjoy that because it encourages you to still use your abilities rather than hoard them, because
be able
you
to
might
keep them.
not waste them all. And that is I'm stealing that. I don't know where I'm going to use it, but I'm stealing it.
So
Uh,
yeah, just to give credit where credit's due,
Yeah.
that is largely based on how the wizard class works in the GLOG, which is
Oh,
the Goblin Laws of Gaming by Arnold Kemp. And it
okay.
was like his blog is fantastic to read. He's the one
Yeah.
who invented the false hydra.
Oh, right.
Um,
I've heard a lot about that.
yeah, just it's like a lot of like real OSR like
Yeah.
theoretical things, and he's got his system. And then the the GLOG uses magic dice for their wizards, and it 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 deviates from this, but I just love how it was always so rich and flavorful,
Yeah.
and one roll
yeah,
tells you so much. And I really adapted that and used that for basically making all the princesses they would be wizards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's cool because like you get a greater effect of rolling high, but you also know it's spent. Conversely, if you roll low, you know you get to do it again later, but it might still have an effect. And again,
right.
it gives more
Yep.
narrative weight to using your abilities, and it makes it feel like it counts when you use them up. And like that is a very unique experience that again I'm definitely going
Yeah.
to steal, and I will happily look into the
Yeah.
source material there too on
Yeah.
inspiration.
No, it's
I
fantastic.
I also love the heart dice. I love being able to help a friend who has failed.
Yeah,
So like, if they failed less than 4, like being able to go, "Okay, cool. Awesome. You did it," right?
yeah,
Great. It's a great instead of no but, yes and, like it really makes sure that you always have something to do and a way to respond to everything,
Yeah.
which is nice. It feels good.
Yeah, that's what it's the heart, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not, and it gets more interesting like with the longer game because your heart dice are gonna like heal you too. So
yeah,
you're foregoing some healing you may need later. So it's
right.
like,
Right.
and at the end you're like, okay, I
Resource
think
attrition, but
it is.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's always worth it to use the heart dice because especially a well-timed one rather than to heal later because there's a
oh
thing.
yeah.
But that's just
Well,
me.
and I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for teamwork mechanics, right? Like
Yeah.
anytime that you're pushing the players to interact with one another rather than one person just trying to be the spotlight, like it is a better story. It's more interesting. It's more realistic, right? Like
Yeah.
if we're
Right.
traveling together on a team, we're doing that for a reason, like,
Yeah.
and y- uh, strangely enough, real life combat is not turn based. And so it kind of it makes interplay occur during other people's turns, and that is always a plus narratively for
Right.
me.
Yeah. And
Um,
then initiative does that too. I don't like I hate everyone in order of their role initiative.
yeah,
I can never keep track of it. It doesn't make sense. I think
no,
it's so that's like one thing I don't ever use. And so
Yeah.
I just, especially in this game where it's like, yeah, you guys to go in any order, this group and this group. And then it does the
Yeah.
splitting the party thing too, where you
Mhm.
get like unique pair ups sometimes where
yeah,
uh who's acting first, whoever you two are ready. You've never really done any. We'll see what happens. Those two, the
yeah.
people that succeeded, they go first, and then it mixes it up in cool ways.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
love
absolutely.
I love that when I mean the whole reason why we do any of this podcast and are trying to learn from different games is always it's often about when mechanics and narrative and tone and touchstones and all that stuff line up well
Yeah.
to facilitate specific gameplay. And I think that man, like just not only do these mechanics just feel good to get playing quickly, but like it kept things really light when we were using these abilities, it wasn't like super granular. They're easy enough to understand, and we're able to kind of get into the fun and the concept of things, like the narrative first side of a game like this. And it's not a game that we're going to get super nitty gritty into the rules unless like that's what we want to do with the system and lean more heavily that way with like a longer running campaign where there's progression and whatnot. Which it does bring up a question. So we had access to level 1 and 2 stuff. When you get into like 3 and 4, is that a cap on the progression or does it go any further off of 4?
4 levels.
Okay. Awesome. Love that.
Yeah, it's made for telling a fairy tale, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I think a dozen sessions is great. I think, 15 sessions is great for like, hey, we start off at level 1, we go to level 2 right away. You get to level 3 after doing some like hard stuff. And then by the time you get to level 4, they are like in a high power game, they would be just like pretty regular, like 5th level spells or something.
Yeah.
But in this game, it changes everything. It's either changes everything, is very powerful, or is very customizable.
Yeah.
So for instance, the kitchen magic, you got the last level 4
Forage.
is literally any
Yeah.
spell you want to cast. Like it's like work with your GM. What does this do? And like
Right.
the enchanted voice is you get to basically you get one wish.
Right.
Wow. That's awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah.
What when it comes to like, I mean, I don't know how much you want to give us a peek under the hood, but when it comes to other mechanical or narrative focused things that you want to explore in game design, what are some maybe future projects for you and stuff that you're working on?
Yeah. My latest thing is making a companion to Perils and Princesses that is solo compatible.
Ooh.
Oh,
Is my
nice.
next
Yeah.
my as far as yeah. And I'm toying with I've been toying with that about what that works. I've been playing lots of solo games and reading lots of solo games to like understand that. I think that's like I feel like there's a lot of Perils and Princesses players based on just talking to them over the past couple of years that would love that.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be really fun to make. I think it would be a good companion to what I have right now. But it's a world I'm trying to learn about.
I'm in a similar boat because I've got a handful of games that are solo first. I've only played a couple myself. And we've talked about this before. It's like just for my flavor of gaming, I have a harder time justifying solo RPG time just because I'm much more of a social first gamer.
Yeah.
But like there is such a world that loves that and that is such a niche that I'm also trying to learn a lot about because again, in the game design space, I go, the ability for somebody to pick up and play this, if they can just do it with themselves, one that they can do it quicker than getting a group together. They're not convincing anybody. You've already won your customer over. Again, thinking on the marketing side, right? And I'm like, that is awesome. I really need to. I'm in a similar spot where I'm like, I want to start learning more about solo first games and or ones that have like hacks that allow them, like what you're talking about, to do a similar play session, but to not be burdened by the need to get a group together to have scheduling and all that stuff work in their favor as you're learning about it right now. And not necessarily that you're expert on solo games, but what are you looking at in terms of facilitating solo play for something along the lines with Perils and Princesses?
Yeah. I mean, I think like what you were saying about it being this like accessible thing, like I think it's such a, like, I don't know, activity books and drawing books and choose your own adventure books were such a great like lonely kid time thing. And so I really want to like capture that. But right now I'm wrestling back and forth between ones that feel adventure-y, where you're rolling dice and seeing how things play out, and ones that feel like narrative journaling. And I'm trying to like bridge that gap between, does it feel too much like homework to like write a story?
Right.
Or does it feel like it needs to feel like a game? And so I'm trying to figure out what to do where like the balance between leaving it open enough and being concrete, like how discreet is it? How open is it? Like, I'm just trying to like really like top level conceptualize what that would look like for this game.
I wonder how much, and do with this what you will, I wonder how much like the idea of wandering could pair well with this. Like that, when I think about like childhood wonder and fairy tales and like that whole, like even just like, you could just use the framework of Red Riding Hood, just like wandering
Yeah.
through the woods to get to grandma's house. Like that would be such a interesting way to do it. And then it's just like, what do you
Oh,
come
yeah.
across along the way with
Yeah, I
roller
think
tables and stuff?
Yep,
I
yep.
don't think it could be doesn't need to be too complicated, I think.
Yeah, that's what
I
I'm
think
saying. Like it could just be
Yeah.
very like, what do I encounter along my wander?
Yeah.
And it's like, early on you define your goal, or like to even use like the game that we played through. It's like we knew we were bringing, treats to someone in another kingdom. And it's like, even just using that framework, I think
Yeah.
would be really
Yeah.
cool.
How many scenarios until, you've reached your goal or like complications?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It's solo play is so interesting to me, and I really
Yeah,
need to
and
block out more time to investigate it myself because I need to find the fun for me
right.
so that I want to do it more. But yeah, I see that like pairing so perfectly with this kind of narrative because, albeit like I love RPGs where we have a party, but like fairy tales are often like one or two people, Hansel and Gretel or something like that, where it's
Yeah,
just, there's a loneliness to the tone of a lot of
absolutely.
those
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
fairy tales, and it just feels like a perfect fit. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us and running the game. This has been
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
absolute blast.
No, I great to finally play with you guys. It's great to hang out. I always love running Cine's adventures, and
Yeah,
I've
absolutely.
run this one so many times, and it's always that's the other thing, like running something over and over again.
always
It's fun
different.
to see. Yeah. Yeah, no, it was great to play.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. But where can everybody find your stuff to support you and check out your game?
Yeah, my name's Ryan Lynch. I go by Outrider Creative on Instagram and TikTok and itch.io.
Check out Sweet Revenge. It is on Backer Kit now. You can get in your late pledges and pick up your own copy. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for listening today, and we'll see you next time on One Shot Tavern.